All right, let me just fix this real quick. We good? We're good. Welcome back to another week. We're looking at the last Beatitude. I'll be honest, I thought that we were going to make it all the way through the summer, but I think I just don't know how to count or something. But anyway, we're in the last one. Hey, how about this weather? It's like gloomy. It's almost like June gloom. Feels like Monterey or something like that, but I love it. Nice little break from the heat. Okay, we're in the last one. And if you're like me and you've been reading the Beatitudes and you're like, this is like incredibly difficult, this last one feels like the least applicable than all of them. So let's read it. We'll get going. So here it is. Matthew chapter 5, starting at verse 10. Blessed are those who are persecuted because of righteousness, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are you when people insult you, persecute you, falsely say all kinds of evil against you, because of me. Rejoice and be glad, because great is your reward in heaven. For in the same way that they persecuted the prophets who were before you. So remember, kind of context is Jesus is setting up his Sermon on the Mount, his greatest collection of his greatest teachings, and this is kind of like the opening, poem, kind of opening sayings of his Sermon on the Mount, and they're basically characteristics of those who are kingdom citizens, meaning those who follow Jesus and live according to his will and his way. And they're not characteristics that you need to get before you become a follower, but they're characteristics that each person should grow into. And this last one is the most difficult, but honestly, if you look at church history, it's the most common. Like if you think about persecution just in the sense of the first like 300 years of the early church, it was persecution on persecution. I think they estimate like 15,000 people died in the first 300 years. We're talking about a religion that started out with 5,000 people after the resurrection. And it quickly expanded exponentially, but they were literally getting martyred and killed on the streets, in the Colosseum. And then you fast forward even throughout the world to today. You look at Christians in Iran, in Pakistan, anywhere really in the Middle East, and they're facing pretty intense persecution. Can't worship in public, we just hired a guy to be on our staff recently, and he is from Kazakhstan, and he was sharing with us that it's a predominantly Muslim country, and because of that, you can't just be like, hey, come to church. It's like, hey, come to this social gathering, and then at the end there's going to be, I'm not going to tell them this, but at the end there's going to be, some type of message about hope or whatever. But like generally you don't really share your faith in public because of the risk of facing intense persecution. So we live in a world where persecution exists, but it doesn't really exist on our soil. It doesn't exist in our land, really. And what I mean by persecution, like intense persecution, martyrdom or torture or death. But there is a type of persecution that does exist here. And so I'll share a story real quick before I get into it. Let me start with the story. So I got a call recently from a buddy of mine who is on a Broadway tour show. Show's called Funny Girl. And he called me. He was about like it's like a 6-month show, and he was about 4 to 5 months into the show. And he's with the same collection of people, maybe like 25 people, and they're traveling basically from city to city, and they're all kind of grouped together, and they all spend a ton of time together, as you can imagine. Now, if you could just kind of imagine who kind of operates on a Broadway tour, it's generally people who are not Christians. Like, basically. Some are, but generally most of them are not Christians, and a lot of them live a lifestyle that is like just kind of similar to any metropolitan city. You have a lot of people in the LGBTQ community who are a part of the cast, people who identify not as man or woman, but as like non-binary. He was there whenever Trump got elected, and it was like, you say the name Trump, it's like saying like Voldemort or something from Harry Potter. Like it's like the he cannot be named person or whatever. It's like they're pretty anti-conservative Christian America, so to speak. And so much so that my buddy, who is a really good friend of mine, loves Jesus, following Jesus for his whole life. And his whole goal, his whole purpose is like, I want to be on the Broadway tour or on Broadway, and I want to be like spreading the name of Jesus. That's what he wants to do. But you can't just street preach, right? Like you can't just get up in front of everyone and start preaching and be like, repent or you're going to hell or whatever. That's not even how he would do it. But you get what I'm saying. Like he can't just street preach. So he has these conversations, and oftentimes they happen like after the show. So the show ends at like 11 o'clock, and pretty much every single person goes out, right? They all go out to get food or drinks or whatever. And he said he was in this middle of this conversation with one of his castmates who was actually one of his good friends. And he's like pretty public about his faith. Like he, public in a sense where he's not, preaching the gospel publicly to them. But he wears like a cross and he has like a Bible kind of in his dressing room. And so people kind of always ask him questions, and they give him like a hard time. Like they're giving him like many persecutions, social ridicule, a little rejection. They mock him, they exclude him from certain things, but nothing super profoundly like gnarly, but still kind of there. He feels the tension. But there was this one time he was in a conversation with someone, and in the conversation, he shared his views about like sex inside of the confines of marriage and outside of the confines of marriage. And he was sharing with this person that he wants to hold to a biblical standard of sexuality. And this person like totally lost their mind on him completely. Like it was just like a standard conversation about like, why aren't you dating anyone, Jack? Well, the reason I'm not sleeping with anyone on this cast is because I hold to a biblical standard of sexuality, and this is what it is. And she got so offended. She looked at him and said, how could you say that to me and about me? And he's like, I didn't say anything about you. And she went on to say like that she was in an open relationship with her husband and they see other people, and so like him saying that is directly targeting him. She like basically flipped the table, told him to F off, and then just left and just didn't talk to Jack anymore. Didn't talk to my friend anymore. It's like, and my buddy's just sitting there like, okay, well that was like literally insane. And he calls me that night, or sorry, not that night, the next day he calls me, hey, he's like, dude, I don't know really what to do. Like this is the situation that happened. And the passage that came to my mind was, blessed are those who persecute you because of righteousness, for yours is the kingdom of heaven. And in the moment that he was experiencing like social ridicule, professional pressure, literally like, could he lose his job over his convictions, over his idea, over his like worldview, like censorship, people don't want him to talk, deplatforming, they don't want him to come near them. Like in the midst of all that, I told him, I'm like, there must be a way where when Jesus says, congratulations, you're persecuted, yours is the kingdom of heaven, it must mean that there is some benefit to being persecuted. And I remember hearing one time that perhaps the greatest benefit of being persecuted is there is a proximity to Jesus that you can only feel when you're experiencing persecution. And the reason why is because when Jesus lived on this earth, he was heavily persecuted. And he experienced this type of persecution that eventually led to his death. And so there's a proximity, like you're so much like him when you are being persecuted that you are literally experiencing where heaven and earth collide in the midst of persecution. I love 2 Timothy chapter 3, verse 12. Paul says this, everyone who wants to live a godly life in Jesus Christ will be persecuted. Every single person who wants to live a godly life is going to be persecuted. And Jesus says it this way, if the world hates you, keep in mind, it hated me first. So every single person should experience some sort of Western version of persecution. Every single person watching, if you want to live a godly life, according to Jesus, according to Paul, there should be some type of social rejection, social ridicule, professional pressure, censorship or deplatforming, internal temptation to compromise, to water things down, to give into the way of the world. There has to be some form of that in the eyes of Paul. And I was reflecting on that, and I was even thinking, because that challenges me, right? Like, I mean, who do I talk to? Who do I exist around? I exist around Christians. I exist around you people. Christians. Who's persecuting me? Right? That's what I think. And I got like, whatever, man. I'm probably like some of you. It's like, I get an occasional Instagram DM that tells me like, you know, that I'm a bigot or a hypocrite, and occasionally a letter comes in the mail to CPC that's like strongly worded and kind of bizarre. But it's like, I'm not experiencing anything like profoundly persecutory, right? Like I'm not experiencing that. And I think part of me is like who I exist around. There's a lot of Christians. But I feel like for some of you, the reason why you don't feel persecution in this sense, social ridicule, rejection, right? Whatever, deplatforming, censorship, right? Professional pressure, like losing a job, not getting promoted. The reason why you don't experience that, I think oftentimes, is because people can't tell that you're a Christian. People can't tell. It's, by the way, this is really easy to say over a video. If I was in person, I don't know if I would be this blunt, but it's like people have to be able to tell. And that's like my buddy who was on Broadway. It was so obvious. Like, even though he probably wasn't perfect and made mistakes, it was really obvious that he was a Christian. And it wasn't just the cross around his neck or the Bible in his dressing room. It was the fact that he like literally wasn't sleeping around with the rest of the cast. It was the fact that like in conversations he was trying to talk about Jesus and talk about a better way of life. It was the fact that, you know, he took seriously his call to be a light to the world. And when he's out and he's getting hit on by dudes and by girls and by people who don't even identify as a boy or a girl, he's not like judging them harshly or being condemning towards them. He's instead like, hey, maybe we should just have a conversation. So his life reflected a way of life. It reflected Jesus so much that people were like repulsed by it, right? And repulsed in not the wrong way. Repulsed in the right way. So after this woman at the bar that they were hanging out at, she left, right? She's pissed off, she leaves. And he's sitting at the bar and he's thinking to himself, that was like the craziest interaction he's ever had. It's just like, he just told someone he didn't want to have sex outside of marriage, and they blew up, lost their mind, and left the room. The guy sitting next to him, not a part of the Broadway tour, leans over and says, hey man, are you a Christian? And he goes, yeah, I'm a Christian. And he goes, so weird, like, I've been thinking about going back to church, and honestly, for some reason, I felt like I needed to go to this bar tonight. I don't know why. By the way, it's like 1:30 in the morning. He's like, I don't know what it was, but something was telling me to go to this bar. And I felt like it was like some voice inside my head, which was a weird voice. And I was like, I got up to this bar and I'm sitting here and I'm listening to you have this conversation. And you're a Christian. And so I'm wondering, like, you know any good churches that I could go to on Sunday? Like, can you believe that? Like, my buddy's literally sitting next to a guy who, after he's been persecuted, is now like, hey, where can I go to church? So they spend the next like 5-10 minutes trying to figure out where to go to church for Sunday morning. And that's where my buddy starts to experience these little glimpses of the kingdom of heaven, this little blessing of persecution. See, Jesus is like, look, when you experience persecution, you're going to experience an immense blessing. And the blessing is you're going to see heaven and earth literally collide. And you're going to see glimpses of what my kingdom will look like. And it's like this beautiful kingdom of reconciliation and redemption and forgiveness and mercy and grace and peace and joy and life. That's what you're going to see. And the only way that me and you will be able to experience, to be able to relate to Jesus in the sense of persecution, is if our lives actually start to look different whenever we go places. Whenever we start to literally follow Jesus in his way. When our business practices align with the way of Jesus. When our marriage life and the way that we live in our marriages align with the way of Jesus. The way that we raise our kids aligns with the way of Jesus. The way that we honor our bodies. The way that we drink alcohol or don't drink alcohol in the way that aligns with the way of Jesus. Like, that is what we're supposed to do. We're supposed to look so markedly different and not to go out and look for persecution. We don't want to do that. But we're supposed to look so markedly different that persecution comes when we're not even expecting it. But that's how markedly different that we're supposed to be living. And the only way that's possible is through the grace of Jesus. The only way that's possible is through the work of the Holy Spirit. It's for God to change us and mold us and to shape us. Okay, I'm 8 minutes over what I try to do. Actually, 6 minutes over what I try to do. So I'm going to stop talking. I love you guys. I hope this was encouraging and convicting at the same time. I'll see you soon.